Hello, I'm Bimbo Awoyele, welcoming you to the business on NN24, and let's kick off on today's edition. Media reports and the feelers within the business community says Nigerian banks are changing their business pattern in humble submission to the new banking model proposed by the central bank. Under the new regime, banks will shed the previous universal banking structure to take up specialized and monoline banking operations. 234 Next reports that banks like UBA and First Bank are already creating a holding company structure in order to align with the new guidelines. The central bank says the banks will be given a transitional period of between 12 to 15 months within which they are to adopt the new holding structure, as the CBN hopes to unbundle the current banking structure. Now, the United Kingdom is trying to cut costs, and Chancellor George Osborne is planning to reveal a long list of spending cuts shortly. Already, spending by the Ministry of Defense has come under the axe. About 17,000 uniformed personnel will lose their jobs. This next report talks about the cutbacks and the angry reaction to them.
Tax the banks and not hurt the poor.
To avert the most drastic reductions in government spending since World War II, the Robin Hood tax campaigners are targeting what they believe is the source of the UK's deficit problem.
We're calling for a tax of £20 billion on the banks to help pay for the cuts. Because after all, it's because of the banks that the country is in this mess. George Osborne has said he will tax the banks, but only a very small amount, only about £2 billion. We think he can do 10 times more.
George Osborne, Britain's finance minister, has grim plans for cuts across the board to reap savings of $132 billion and to restore credibility to public finances. Restoring public confidence, though, may take longer.
The thing that will most reduce the deficit is seeing a solid recovery in place and economic growth. That's what will generate tax revenues to bring the deficit down. Not a programme that's going to put perhaps 1 million more people out of work. It'll have a disastrous consequence that'll actually make the deficit even worse. I think there's going to be a huge public reaction.
Unions showed up at the Methodist Church Hall in London to protest, from dock workers to teachers and social workers.
They were very worried about cuts in social care, care for the elderly, healthy eating initiatives for children. They're trying to protect the most vulnerable, but that's not going to happen.
Inside, people cheered and waved flags in support of keynote speakers representing trade unions and the arts.
We know this government isn't interested in making the bankers pay for their crisis. It's the ordinary workers who will bear the burden.
Joseph Kloska starred in the British film Made in Dagenham about women who lobbied the UK government for equal pay in the 1960s.
I hope that in a few years' time that I'll be working on a film that tells the story of how we today took on this government, took on their cuts, and we won.
For every £1 that the UK Film Council has invested, they get a return of £5, which I think is fairly extraordinary in the current economic climate. So in terms of the economy, it's a tiny, tiny fraction of public spending, but in return it generates over £1 billion for the Treasury.
Kloska was there not just to stress the arts as a valued contributor to the UK economy, but to the development of the country itself.
They'll cut the elite off and remove anything for the grassroots, which is not a society I want to live in. We need to be able to allow people to find means of self-expression, means of empowerment, and that's how you do that through funding and supporting and engaging in the arts.
Braced for the budget cuts, most Britons are taking a stance, either picketing shoulder to shoulder or staging street dramas to portray the nation's plight. All eyes are on George Osborne.
And from the UK, we move to the United States to show you a peculiar and revolutionary vehicle to help in these times of high fuel prices. An entrepreneur in Virginia has developed a car that runs for months without the need for a fill-up.
The car weighs 830 pounds.
So light, cheap designer Ron Mathis can push the vehicle with his thumb. But even more amazing is the fact that this car will run for 100 miles on just 1 gallon of gas.
It would be 100 miles per gallon if we ran on gasoline. We actually ran on E85, but the amount we're allowed to use is the same energy content as 1 gallon of gasoline.
The Edison 2 very light car, that is its name, is this year's winner of the Automotive X Prize competition. Not only is the car light, its sleek aerodynamic design allows it to move at a pretty good clip down the highway.
It will run at about 120. It cruises very happily at about 85.
This is only a prototype, so there are few amenities or creature comforts. Those will be built into other versions of the car, but only to a limited extent.
Is it quite as luxurious as a Buick or a Cadillac? No, it's not.
Nor is it likely to ever have power windows or other power-driven accessories that add weight and decrease fuel efficiency in cars.
You can't be lazy and stay fit, you know, it just doesn't work like that.
Instead, it works like this. The car's lightweight, steel frame and aluminum running gear enables designers to make the rest of the car even lighter.
You see those big fancy heavy brakes in the wheels of fancy cars driving around. Our brakes weigh a fraction of that, and they still stop the car 30 feet shorter than a 2010 SS Camaro.
But at what point will American car buyers be willing to trade luxury for efficiency?
Right around the time gas hits $5 a gallon, this is going to start to seem like a really good idea.
And now we'll take a short break, but the business will resume shortly. Right afterwards, do stay with us.